Good morning. My name is Rebecca Spence, press officer at the Banque of Canada, and I will be moderating this press conference. Senior Deputy Governor Carolyn Rogers will be pleased to take questions for about 20 minutes. Before asking your question, please state your name and affiliation. We are webcasting this press conference, so please use the wireless microphone, which my colleague will bring to you if you raise your hand. We also have some journalists participating via teleconference today, so we'll do one question in the room first and then turn to the phone lines to try to make sure everyone gets a chance to ask a question. Avant de poser une question, prière de vous identifier, je vous demanderai également d'utiliser le micro sans fil. Libre à vous de poser vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. So we will start in the room with Chris Varco.
Hi, Chris Varco with the Calgary Herald. We've seen in the last 8 weeks oil prices globally fall from about $100 to $85 a barrel. I'm just wondering, what do you see as the impact this will have upon the Canadian economic outlook going forward through the rest of the year on investment levels and then ultimately on the rate of inflation?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Chris. As I outlined in my speech, certainly that fall that we saw in gasoline prices over the summer contributed to the downturn we saw in inflation. CPI went from 8.1 to 7.6. So that has helped bring the pressure down on inflation. Apart from that, though, as I pointed out in my speech, inflation has broadened and has increased. So certainly it has helped. You know, what I would say is commodities in general remain volatile. So there's still a chance that we get pressure back up in the other direction, but certainly if gas prices stay down, it'll help inflation, headline inflation.
Are there any other questions in the room before we go to the phone lines? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines now. I just want to remind people on the call to mute their line if they're not asking a question. You can do so by pressing *6 and unmute by pressing *6 again, or using the mute function on your mobile device. Pour mettre votre ligne téléphonique en mode discrétion, appuyez sur *6. We're going to start with Julie Gordon from Reuters.
Hello, Senior Deputy Governor. Sorry, it's a bit echoey. Can you talk us through the decision basis points instead of another point yesterday? Please.
Oh, sorry, Julie, you're cutting in and out. We didn't get the question.
Okay, I'm going to try doing it this way. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, sorry. So the question was, thank you, first of all, Senior Deputy Governor, for taking our questions. And my question was, if you could just give us some context on why you decided to go with 75 basis points instead of another 100 basis points. What changed?
Well, let me, take you through the decision a bit. A lot of this is in my speech, Julie, but, you know, I think we start every deliberation by looking at what's developed in the economy since our last decision and relative to our outlook. So certainly we did that this time. I would say the three things that really stood out for Governing Council on this decision was, first and foremost, probably inflation is staying high, and inflation expectations are continuing to stay elevated. And also, of course, the Canadian economy remains strong. We're in excess demand. As long as that's the case, you're going to see upward pressure on prices. So, you know, overheated economy, inflation's high and broadening, our core measures were all up, and expectations remain high. So those three things, I think, were really key to the decision that the Governing Council made yesterday. You know, we have seen some early signs that monetary policy is working. I talked a lot in the speech about the lag in monetary policy, but certainly there's some early indications. Interest rate sensitive parts of the economy, the housing market is, of course, the obvious example of that, have seen some pullback. GDP was a little lower than we expected, but spending and investment remained high. So, you know, in total, what we saw was a continuing pressure on inflation. We're not where we were in July, but we're a long way from where we need to be. So those were the things that really fed into the decision yesterday that we took.
Thanks, Julie. We'll go next to Mark Rundle with the Globe and Mail.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking the question. I noticed that you mentioned that you're going to need a period of lower growth to balance things out and kind of work out this excess demand. And I also noticed that there was no sign or no mention of a soft landing in today's speech, which differs from how Governor Macklem talked about it in July. And I'm wondering, I guess, does the bank still believe this soft landing is possible? And does the comments about the necessity of lower growth entail a likely recession?
Okay, I think you were a little hard to hear, Mark, but I think I caught the gist of your question. So, look, the Canadian economy remains strong. We're at record low unemployment. We've got 1 million job vacancies available. We think there is room in the economy to cool it and stay in positive growth territory. That's our base case. Certainly we do need, as I pointed out and you mentioned, we need a period of moderation on growth to let demand come down, let supply come back up and rebalance the economy. The bank still sees a path to a soft landing. That's still our objective. We need to cool the economy to get inflation back to target. Of course, we don't want to cool the economy more than we have to. We continue to see a path to a soft landing. As the governor has said many times, and I said again this morning, is that path narrow? Is it a delicate balance? Absolutely. Ultimately, our goal is to get inflation back to target. We're focused on that, but we're going to do it in the best way possible.
Thank you, Mark. Just for any reporters who are late in joining the call, if you have a question, let us know by sending a quick email to communications@bankofcanada.ca and we'll put you in the queue. Pour les journalistes qui se sont joints à l'appel avec un peu de retard, envoyez un bref courriel à communication@banqueducanada.ca si vous souhaitez poser une question. We'll go next to Greg Quinn of Market News, followed by Eric Hertzberg from Bloomberg. Go ahead, Greg.
Hello. I was wondering if Governing Council is still looking at monetary policy relative to any kind of neutral interest rate, or if perhaps you've shifted, like Jerome Powell, to the view that, when inflation is so high, that kind of a theoretical concept isn't as helpful.
Well, we've said in the past that we thought rates needed to get into neutral territory quickly. And we estimated neutral to be around 3%. We were starting from a very low point, so it took a number of big steps to get up into neutral territory. But, neutral is a range. It's an estimate. There isn't a sort of magic formula that gives us neutral rate. A lot of it is sort of state dependent or, depends on the environment we're in. I think the thing that the Governing Council is most focused on is getting inflation back to target. We don't have a target for interest rates. We have a target for inflation. That's the target we're focused on, and we're determined to get it back to 2%.
Thanks, Greg. Eric?
Yes, so a question regarding front-loading here. Are forceful actions larger than 25 basis point hikes still on the table here, or is the era of outsized rate hikes over for the Bank of Canada?
Well, I'm here to talk about the decision we made yesterday. We took another big step yesterday. We have said and continue to say that we think front-loading is the best way to deal with the underlying causes of inflation and to navigate towards that soft landing that we want. We'll take the next decisions with the information we have in front of us at the time. And we talked today in the speech about the kinds of things we'll be looking for as we make the next decisions. But we'll take the next decision when it comes.
Thanks, Eric. We're going to go next to Tony Mace of Mace News, followed by Najoud from the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about wages and your level of concern about the possibility of a wage price spiral, given some of the data we've seen recently on rising wages and some wage settlements. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this morning during the Q&A, and I'm glad to have the question. It gives us a chance to make some important clarifications on this topic. So we're in an environment of extremely tight labor markets, excess demand and high inflation. And we know employers are very focused on attracting and retaining the employees they need. They need to do that to keep up with the high level of demand for their products and services. Of course, this is going to put pressure on wages. We understand that. We also understand that workers are, they're looking at the rate of inflation and what it's doing to their purchasing power, their budgets, and they're looking at the same tight labor markets, and they're thinking, I need a raise. This is also completely understandable. It's not our job to provide advice on wage or price setting. We're talking about this topic because we want Canadians to understand how these decisions affect inflation. The scenario that we're worried about is that Canadians look at the current rate of inflation. They think it's here to stay. They start incorporating that thinking into long-term decision-making. That's the sort of spiral that we talk about. That's the entrenchment that we talk about that would be damaging to the economy. Certainly, if that starts to occur, it makes inflation much harder to get down. It means monetary policy has to do more. Rates have to go higher to get inflation down. So, of course, we would like to avoid that. We think Canadians would like to avoid that too. So that's our aim in sharing that information. We'll be watching wages closely. That was one of the things I pointed out in the speech. Really what we need is that supply and demand to come back in balance across the economy, and particularly in labor markets. That'll take the pressure off wages.
All right, we'll go to the Canadian Press now.
Hi, thanks for taking our questions. In your speech, you make mention of the fact that it will take time to get inflation down and that there could be bumps along the way. Can you elaborate a little bit about what you mean by bumps? Is this in reference to what the impact of slower economic growth could be or how severe it could be?
Yeah, I think I talked about some of the risks in the speech and in the questions after. I mean, we're still in an environment of uncertainty. There's still a number of things globally that could have an effect on inflation globally as well as domestically. So certainly the war in Ukraine is keeping commodity prices really volatile, and it's also having a sort of general effect on confidence. In China, we're seeing an ongoing effect of COVID lockdowns. That's also putting pressure on supply. So some of the same things that have affected us and have impacted inflation to date, those things they haven't gone away. So they're still out there. They can still have an effect on inflation here in Canada. Domestically, we see really strong demand. We need to get that demand down and give time for some of the global effects on supply to work their way through, let supply catch up, get that balance back in the economy. That's what we're aiming for.
All right, thank you. So that's the end of my teleconference list. I just want to open it up one last time for the reporters in the room. We have time for one more question if anyone here would like to ask. If not, for the purposes of fairness, we'll call it there. Thank you all so much for coming today, and have a great day.